Do you wish plastic pollution would magically disappear? Wave your wand and everyone is buying secondhand? Alakazam! And recycling is demystified. We do. Your hosts, Oakley J. Fast, a chemical engineer, and Sarah Fuentes, a waste and recycling expert, are here to demystify the circular economy. Welcome to Trash Magic.
Sarah and Jennifer met at the Waste Expo in Las Vegas. And we've just all become fast friends, and we're very excited to have you on the show.
Yes, welcome.
Okay, so before I do your intro, I know that you're also a woman of puns.
Yes.
And we really need a title for this episode. And I don't know if it's like a steal in the market, or like, oh, Jennifer, she's such a steal, or, you know, I don't know. Like, what ideas do you have?
There's going to be, like, it's going to come down the pipeline. We're going to, like, figure out, like, we'll steal it from something. Like, there's going to be something that comes out of the can. Literally, I'm holding up the trash can if you're listening to this right now. Like,
you recycling these ideas. Yeah.
Yeah. We will.
Amazing. Okay, cool. If something pops in your mind during this episode, please.
100%. We will come
Amazing.
Up with it.
We have full permission to be random on the puns.
Yes. 100%.
We'll be scrappy with it for sure.
Oh, that might be it. Okay. Jennifer Betts, everyone, is the CEO of recycled media, ScrapTrader and Magnar Metals. She brings almost 2 decades of experience in the circular economy, specifically in metals recycling and manufacturing. Although she's based in the US, her experience spans the globe, working in ferrous, non-ferrous, and ferrous alloy metals. And she's going to teach us what all that means and why it's important to you, dear audience. She's done this in metal recycling facilities, steel mills, and trading companies. To bring awareness to the opportunities within the metals industry, she launched the Bets on the Future podcast, a pun in itself, which highlights the variety of career opportunities as told by women leading those diverse fields of expertise. She lives in Thousand Oaks, California, with her husband, 2 children, and a fur child, a dog. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be on Trash Magic. And Oakley, I'm looking very much to meeting you in person one day. And Sarah, it's very lovely to see you again. It was wonderful to see you in person in Vegas, even just, a couple weeks ago for Waste Expo?
Yeah, just last month.
That's wild to think. Just a few weeks ago. Yeah.
Yes, it was wonderful. Sarah and I got to sit on a panel for Waste Expo on the wonderful world and topic of TikToking and podcasting for the waste and recycling world. So that was pretty cool to sit on that panel together.
Yeah, it was definitely a fun topic. We had a full house, full room, and it was really nice being able to kind of just allow a healthy conversation around, having a voice and communicating and educating, because really that's one of the reasons why we like to do this, is to educate folks.
Yeah, so folks, if you want to learn more about the metal industry, listen to this episode, but also check out Bets on the Future. So speaking of which, how did you get into this industry? The metal industry, is it something, I don't think a kid like wakes up one day and is like, oh, that's what I want to do with it, So how'd you get into this industry?
No, definitely not. Working on changing that.
Yes. You have a children's book. Yes.
Well, I've got a friend in the industry that has a couple children's books out there. So we're definitely working on changing that narrative. Maybe one day I'll write a children's book. It's on the maybe on the horizon. But I have a finance degree. Like, I honestly should not be in the metals industry. I know way too much about metallurgy at this point. It's kind of crazy. But the first company that I worked for, the David J. Joseph Company, recruited heavily out of the university that I went to undergrad at, Indiana University, and career fair in college. Like, that's honestly crazy enough story. Went through several interview rounds, and they pretty much were like, you're going to get a company car, an expense account, and you get to go travel the country. And I was like, I don't know what scrap metal is, but sure.
But I know what a company car is.
I was like, Chevrolet Impala with a spoiler, sold. Like,
Wow.
sounds great. So, I mean, honestly, that's literally how I got started. Is I just thought, you know what, I'll get 6 months sales experience, and then, you know, I'll go work for some other industry, you know, whatever. And honestly, once I actually got into the industry and I started learning how I kind of fell into this world that really touches everyone's lives on a daily basis, but yet no one really realizes that it's there. I kind of was just like, I'm sold. Like, I'm in it. This is what I want to do. And honestly, the people that are in it as well are really some truly incredible individuals. The companies that are here, the things that they make, manufacture, produce, really cool to see. So it's been a truly incredible ride the past couple decades. So that's you know, kind of how I fell into it, honestly.
You sound like you fell in love.
I did.
A little.
Yes, a little bit. Who knew touring a scrapyard, or as we call it, metal recycling facility these days, that 22-year-old would still be here, and being in the industry, because I honestly had no idea what I had signed up for when I signed that offer letter. Had no idea.
Life is funny that way.
Yeah,
Very
who
much
would have
so.
known that you would have fallen in love with an industry that's so, you know, industrial, you know, so big and kind of gritty and loud and, you know.
Yeah, had no idea. The company that I first worked for eventually got purchased by Nucor Steel, and Nucor is now the largest steel manufacturer in North America. And part of my training when I switched over to the ferrous, which Fe is the element for iron, and so that's the adjective for irony, if you will. So many good, like, we're
keep them coming.
So many good options. So when I switched over to the ferrous side of things, one of my training programs was to go to a steel mill. And honestly, the first time that you ever see a charge bucket drop just tons of recycled steel into an open furnace that has molten steel in it, and you just see it drop, and then you eventually see the electrodes go into the furnace and start shocking the steel to heat it up to the point where it melts it. I mean, you don't go back. Like, you just like this is it.
No, it's pedal to the metal at that point. That's incredible. You know, like, that image, I can see that, and that, like, effect on you. And also, I completely agree. The people in the waste industry are kind of the best people. Sorry, but we are. So, okay, but one thing that you're still trying to improve is that you told us that the steel making industry is 20% female on a good day. So how do you welcome and support other women in the industry?
There's a variety of ways that I'm working on that. There are several associations that are in the industry in different capacities that are working to support women, encourage them in leadership roles, as well as to normalize the female experts that are in the field for both females and males to understand that women enjoy these fields. Like, that this is exciting. Like, I think anybody, when they see an EAF, an electric arc furnace, melt steel, I think male or female, you can appreciate that. So the Association of Women in the Metals Industry, AWMI, is one of those industries that helps support women. I participate in it as just somebody that goes to the events and help support and participate. In another capacity, I like to participate in REMA, Recycled Materials Association, Women in Recycling events as well, and their mentorship program, where I do have a mentee currently in the industry. So that goes on an annual basis just to help encourage. I do reach out to individual women within the industry just to see if there's anything that I can offer of support or encourage them to, maybe apply for that position or apply for the leadership role. And then lastly, the podcast is something that has been on my mind for a while because I've done quite a bit of business with females in the industry over the years. And then when I go online, I don't really see the representation that I've seen in the industry between that 20 to 30% represented online. And so I wanted to give women an accurate representation, whether they don't see it maybe on the panels, on the conferences, or maybe they don't see it on the websites or LinkedIn. And so I created Bets on the Future as an opportunity for them to see themselves and see other women and also see the variety of careers that exist out there and recognize that there are more women in this industry than what they or other men may realize. It's just sometimes we might be on islands in companies, and sometimes it might feel like there are less of us out there, but in reality, there are more than what we realize. And so sometimes, unless you see it online, especially when we work from home these days, it may feel a little isolating. So that was a big push of why I wanted to do the podcast, is to help people, both male and females, realize that there are more of us, to help encourage the next generation, again, both male and female, to recognize that our industry is pretty cool, pretty incredible, and help encourage them to come and check out the opportunities that exist here.
It's so important to see yourself, in a leadership role, somebody like you. It's so important. So that's awesome.
I definitely agree with you. I love that you're doing it, and I love that it gives, visibility for a young, maybe a young person that's interested in the industry to see someone, that they can relate to. As you were talking, you mentioned, you said a word. And so for the people that are listening, they may not have known what ferrous or non-ferrous means. And so I understand that in the metal industry, it's divided into ferrous and non-ferrous metals. Can you give us a quick crash course on these two and why the industry is divided this way?
Yes. So I brought my magnet. Everybody has it in the industry. This is my, I'll call it my baby one, just because I don't work at a yard anymore. So the point of having a larger one at this point is relatively unnecessary. But ferrous and non-ferrous is essentially the dividing line, because from a chemistry standpoint, from a metallurgical standpoint, that is why we divide it. Ferrous, Fe, is on the periodic table as iron, which sticks to a magnet, hence why we all like to carry these magnets. And that is essentially either what you're looking for in your chemistry, more or less, or what you're not looking for. So it's either the upgrade or the downgrade. And so that's why we tend to separate it on a very simplistic term. So when I was trading non-ferrous, this was something that I heavily relied on, the magnet, and I would drag it along bales of aluminum cans, for instance. And if it stuck to anything, that was an issue, because that to me meant that something was iron in it or steel. And I can get into the specifics of the difference there. But that meant that when I would put that bale of aluminum cans in the furnace, there would be iron or steel, and that's a contaminant. So that's why we carry the magnets, and that's why we separate them. And that's just on the physical side. Pricing side, on a very broad perspective, they also operate very differently. The ferrous world, for the most part, and I'm very much generalizing because it's changed a little bit in recent years, operates on a monthly basis. More or less, the price only changes monthly. On the non-ferrous side of things, day by day, hour by hour, minute by minute, it operates in pounds, cents per pound, dollars per pound, operates on that. It's because when you think of non-ferrous like aluminum, copper, brass, those types of items, they have a higher dollar amount. They're worth more. So that's why they get traded in those. Copper has been in the news lately for a variety of reasons. It's been trending upward. So you put it in that perspective. That's why it's on the non-ferrous side versus on the ferrous side of things, it is in tons, which there's actually a variety of different types of tons, but you put it in tons and it's, hundreds of dollars per ton, because when you translate it down to cents per pound, it's very small because you need a lot of it to make it worthwhile to move it.
Honestly, I'm so nerding out right now. I love this. I wonder if people listening to the episode are like, what? So let's just bring it like to everyday folks of like, when I'm looking around a room, like, what is ferrous and non-ferrous? Like, tell me more about how the everyday person can like relate what you're talking about to their like home.
Absolutely. So the biggest thing from, most recent, everyday items, probably the biggest one everybody can like talk about is like, everybody has it, right? Everybody's got their stainless like steel. Yep, exactly. They've got their metal cup, right? Their metal. I'm actually surprised that I don't have more than one on the desk currently. Yes, exactly. These are metal, right? Stainless steel. And so depending on who you ask, most would probably put it in the non-ferrous category. Some would put it on the ferrous. We're getting a little technical here. It kind of straddles the line, right? But this metal, right? The iPhone, the most recent iPhone, actually has a pretty decent amount of recycled aluminum content in it. And based on where they're made in China, Apple actually had to go very much out of their way to find an aluminum facility in China that actually uses recycled content. So that was pretty incredible on their part. Your electronics have a lot of metal in them. So, from not just the frame, I'm looking at my laptop currently, but the circuit boards inside of them actually have a variety of copper and precious metals on them, not just the plastics of the actual circuit boards, but there's a lot of non-ferrous metals on top of them. The cords all around you, the wires in your house are going to have copper or aluminum in them as well. The vehicle that you drive in has aluminum, steel. It's going to have copper. It's going to basically be made out of a lot of metals and metallic content throughout the whole vehicle. I'm staring at Sarah's microphone currently, and I'm looking at metallic content currently. Exactly. Yes.
My magnet on my phone, but my bottle.
Yep. Exactly.
This water bottle doesn't stick.
Yes.
Oh yeah. We just caused a nightmare for our audio editor. But anyway, okay, this is fascinating. And like bringing it together with the waste industry, and you mentioned contamination. So having like clean streams, which it sounds like in the metal industry is ferrous and non-ferrous, it sounds like having this mixture of different types of metals in your cars and your phones and everything sounds like kind of a nightmare for the metal industry. I don't know. I'm just making that up, but maybe it is.
Yes and no. So we've come up with some solutions to it, and it's always a work in progress because then new products get created and then we have to figure out how to resolve them. So one thing that we came up with is when the automobile was created, and then we got to the point as a society that then we could basically buy a second vehicle, and then we could, run that into the ground, and then we could buy another vehicle. And then we started piling up all these cars. And then what do we do with these cars? All of a sudden we have all this metal. What do we do with it? Well, in the 1950s, maybe 60s, we actually invented something called the automobile shredder. And so it's been improved upon since then. But we have these across the country. And more or less what we do is we drain all the liquids and we take out a lot of the, higher value items that are in your vehicle prior to this. But we smash it up and we put it on conveyor belts, and then we drop it down into this essentially giant smashing machine that is going to crush up your car into itty bitty little pieces. That is then going to go through a section where there are giant magnets that are going to pull out all of the iron, steel, right? All the non-ferrous, anything that's not steel, essentially anything that does not stick to a magnet, is going to go off to another section of the downstream where it will then get sorted again, so that you then get it to a process to where we can clean it up to a point where we can get pretty much clean aluminum, pretty much, stainless, pretty much, like a copper-ish product over here, so that we can get it to a point to where we can then use it to be remelted into new products. And so your car that you're driving has a pretty decent amount of recycled material content already in the metal. A lot of car manufacturers just don't advertise it because it's not always guaranteed based on where their suppliers are bringing it in from, because it constantly changes in their supply chain. Now, when you look at the new generation of cars, now we've got EVs. Well, okay, the EV batteries can't go through the automobile shredders. That obviously would cause some severe safety issues. So now how do we handle the huge influx of EVs that we know are going to come through our facilities? We've started to see them. How do we properly handle them? And then also, how do we make sure that we are getting the metallic content back out? Because the growing demand is not going to be able to keep up with the mining and the demand. And also, mining is just a huge carbon footprint. There's also several other social, moral, ethical issues surrounding.
We've had a conversation around this before.
So
it can get real intense and real dark real quick.
Exactly. We've seen companies pop up in the United States that have now come up with new technology to essentially process the batteries and be able to recycle them now. We don't have the capacity for the existing ones that are coming off the roads, but we're getting there. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, we had a really interesting conversation with Blue Water Battery. If you've heard of them, you should look them up if you haven't, but they repair batteries, which is so cool and something that I never kind of considered. So, of course, it's repair first before recycle. So hopefully those cars that are coming down your way have already had a repair or have already considered that, or, something like that. But anyway, yeah, I think that people think about recycling as the first thing, but it's the last step. Usually it should be the last step. Sarah, did you have any other follow-up questions so far?
I'm really fascinated around the whole shredding and it makes me want to go visit one of those facilities for
Seriously.
sure.
You've got some near you that are pretty cool.
Well, I might need to make a field trip out there.
That needs to happen. Amazing. Okay, so again, kind of bringing it home, literally. So I have because I'm so conscious about waste, sometimes I hoard things that I know don't have to go in the landfill, but have other, I have a whole pile of aerosol cans and I have a whole pile of all sorts of stuff. But specifically, I have a bunch of keys that I have no idea where they go to, whatever. And I feel a little embarrassed bringing them to a scrapyard, being here's my handful of keys. And I guess my question to you as an expert is what the hell do I do with my metal that I don't want to throw in the landfill at my house?
Pretty much anything with metallic content, a scrapyard will take. You have keys, they're probably maybe made out of brass, maybe steel, depending on what kind they're made out of. They have value. We, as in my former metals trader self, we trade metal. It's a commodity. We reuse it all the time. So scrapyards pay money for your metal. So you've got metal keys, bring them in, they'll pay you for it.
Amazing. Okay.
And it doesn't even matter if you've got 5 keys, whatever. I mean, it's kind of worth, depending on if it's worth your time. I get it, but
I mean, I don't personally mind about getting paid for it. I just don't want to landfill it. So yes. That's great to know that I don't need to be embarrassed and just take my little bits. Okay, great. Yeah, that's the key to my heart, that answer right there.
There you go. Maybe that's the title.
Hey, maybe. I don't know. Amazing. Well, we always ask our wonderful guests the same final 2 questions. Unless you have something else, Sarah, that you want to jump in, or are we good? Are we ready?
No. I'm curious to know your experience of Trash Magic. Definitely want to hear Jennifer's experience of that.
And Trash Magic is a philosophy that there is value, there's magic in what others see as disposable.
My Trash Magic story was when I first started at my first company out of college. Again, I didn't know what I had signed up for. And it was eye-opening to me that the blue bin at the end of your driveway that, you put your recyclables in, I just kind of imagined oh, poof, my aluminum can just magically became a new aluminum can. I had no idea that there was this whole world of trading behind it. There just wasn't this I had no idea. So it's been this kind of eye-opening experience where when I saw the flow of it, where I would buy truckloads of aluminum cans to be able to melt down, and then it would get turned into either new aluminum cans or painted siding, or it would get turned into aluminum foil or into all these other products. And it went into this whole other life cycle that could then be used into something else. And then it would be brought back into the scrapyard X number of years or days later to be turned into something else again. It was just kind of this huge mind shift of
that is magic. That is real trash magic. You see how, that can has kind of morphed and shifted its shape. It's really interesting. It makes me think about something, within my culture of a shapeshifter. I never thought of aluminum as a shapeshifter before, but the way that you describe it makes me think about that, because it goes from these really hard, rigid shapes to these really flexible shapes. And it's just really amazing to see that. And, it makes me think about also the nature and how close metal is also nature. and how we don't really associate it as nature, because sometimes we think is more browner things like woods and florals and things like this. But metal is also nature too, you know. So this kind of makes me think about that. I'm curious to know too, what is your call to action to our audience here at Trash Magic? We ask every one of our guests what their call to action is, and for the people that are listening today.
My call to action is very much tied into the Trash Magic story, and it's please do not throw away those aluminum cans. Please take the moment, take the extra time to find a spot to put them in the recycling bin. Or if you don't have a location for them, to set them aside. The United States has to import the majority of its primary aluminum needs. And the first 4 countries that we have to import the aluminum in from are China, Russia, India, and then Canada. So fortunately, we do have a friendly neighbor to the north, but by throwing away about 55% of our UBCs, which is used beverage cans, into the landfills annually, we are doing ourselves a very grave disservice from that perspective. And that's not necessarily the environmental reason why you should be recycling the aluminum, but aluminum goes into a variety of infrastructure, a variety of national security projects, and obviously beverage containers. But it's something that people should be aware of, that that's not necessarily something that they should be throwing away. It's something that we should be more aware of, what we need to help support ourselves domestically.
You're really emphasizing this value, right? The value of this material. And we, as people oftentimes just take this material for granted. And that's the other thing too. It's like, it makes me think about economics, because it does affect economics. It does affect even on a very micro scale to, the local homeless person that's pulling the cans out of the garbage can, to a very big scale where it's going to affect potential safety and interactions on a government level. So it's like, hey, that affects us on an economical scale as well. So I really appreciate you highlighting that today in your call to action, because that's pretty eye-opening in my opinion.
It wasn't until recently that I thought of sustainability as national security, also benefits national security, because if you think about renewable energy, then we also can rely on our own internally produced renewable energy. So anyway, it's very fascinating. And that's something that I had never considered until recently as an additional possible benefit of sustainability and, circular economy. So thank you for adding that, brand new idea. Very cool. Not to mention that metals are infinitely recyclable, right? We didn't even bring that up, but yeah.
Absolutely. And on the aluminum can note, it uses 95% less energy to remelt it than it does if you had to mine bauxite, which then you have to refine it into alumina and then smelt it into, aluminum. I think I actually flipped the terms around there, but you get the point. It's very energy intensive to get it out of the ground all the way to actually the product that we see today, versus you can use renewable energy to remelt the aluminum can down.
Wow.
And be more self-sufficient.
So there's literally no reason to landfill an aluminum can. Carry it around with you, drive around with it until you can find a recycle bin. Yeah, that's
There's
right.
definitely value. So
Yes,
just people don't be throwing away your pennies and your quarters and your nickels like that.
Yeah.
You gotta like that. Throw it this way at Trash Magic. We got our Patreon.
That's right. Check out our Buy Me a Coffee. We got a Patreon.
you got your cans. Throw these cans this way.
Jennifer, it was such a pleasure. Thank you so much for enlightening us on this really fascinating field that people don't think about very often. So
yeah,
I appreciate
I'm
you very
totally
much.
like stunned. I'm like sitting here with my mouth open, like, how did I not know this?
Me too. Me too.
So thank you. Thank you for giving me game, girl.
Well, thank you so much for having me on here. Like, I've been, following along on your journey, and it's been really wonderful, like learning about the trash, waste, and recycling part of, the industry that I've been adjacent to. And so like your world has been really fascinating to learn about. And I really appreciate everything that you've been doing on your industry and getting it out there and helping educate people on what to do and maybe not what to do on some things. So I really appreciate the hard work and everything that you've been doing to promote it. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening. Trash Magic is made with love and supported by Sarah's company, Smart Waste USA, and Oakley's company, Level Up Planet. That means that we're self-funded. If you liked this episode, there are 3 ways you can support Trash Magic. 1, follow us on Instagram at trashmagic_podcast. 2, rate us on your favorite podcast platform. Or 3, if you'd like to financially support the podcast, consider buying us a coffee or joining us on Patreon. All of this info and more is available on our website, trashmagicpodcast.com. Thank you to Danny Finkelstein for our intro music, to Faizan Sharif for audio editing and mastering, and to our marketing manager, Jay Hewen. And most of all, thank you to our amazing audience. We couldn't do it without you. Signed with love from Sarah and Oakley, your hostesses with the compostesses.